something else that's really important when in ensuring that your site is kept safe is to, generally speaking, avoid downloading themes and plugins that are being offered for free that are otherwise premium themes and plugins. I know you may go to Google and you may see, links to sites that, that are offering you free downloads for like I said, plugins and themes that, basically the developers are selling. And you have to be careful. Now, I'm not saying that they're all bad, but one of the reasons that, people do this, and it's not necessarily illegal either, depending on the license for the particular plugin or theme, but one of the reasons that people give away themes, and if you think about it, if it's a paid plugin or a theme, why is this person giving it away for free? And one of the reasons that they do this is to, implant malicious code onto your site. And in some cases, it may be as harmless as hiding a backlink to one of their sites. But it could also be backlinks to sites that, such as porn or sites with illegal downloads that, would not do well for your search engine optimization. So you have to be careful of that. And then it could be as extreme as code that tracks your keystrokes and records your password, and then later on you try to log into your site and it's been taken over completely by a hacker. So that's something you have to be careful of. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about in terms of, securing your site is that, and you should always keep regular backups of your WordPress site, and that's your database, your files. Keep regular backups. If you use your site pretty regularly in terms of updating content, then you may need to update it as frequently as every day. Usually once a week would be fine for most people, but it really is up to you depending on how often you use your site. Because like I've mentioned a lot of things that you can do to protect your site, but the reality is that there's no foolproof method for any platform, and WordPress is no exception, for persons to hack into your site. If they're determined enough, if they have enough resources, you see sites, some big name sites online get hacked all the time. Government sites, and these sites will have far better security measures than you probably would have on your site, and these sites have been hacked. So a great thing to have is a good backup of your site that you can restore, so that as soon as you find that your site is down, you can get in contact with your hosting company, or just erase all the malicious code, change your password, and then you can install a clean version of your site, but something that's up to date so that you don't lose a lot of your content that you've worked so hard to create. So in the next video, I'm actually going to show you, there are many ways to do this, many plugins. You can do this through your hosting account, but I'm just going to show you one quick way to do it in the next video. In the next set of videos, I just want to quickly take a look at the security issue. And let me first of all say that WordPress itself, as in the software, is inherently safe. And when you have a WordPress site, it's not that it's more prone to being hacked than any other type of CMS. But the reality is that it's because of the popularity of WordPress and its growth, and the fact that it powers so many millions of sites on the internet, then what you find is that there are a lot of instances of security breaches and hacks. But again, like I said, it's not to say that WordPress gets hacked more than any other CMS such as Drupal or Joomla. In fact, many people argue that WordPress is in fact a lot safer than these other platforms. But the reality is that just based on the mere popularity, because the reality is that it's unlikely that a hacker is going to hack a site that is not popular. It's very unlikely. So a couple of things that you have to look out for to keep your site secure are as follows. The first thing I recommend is that you have WordPress installed manually. Now, your hosting account, especially if you have cPanel, will most likely come with an automatic installer, such as Fantastica Deluxe, Softaculous, and Auto Installer, and similar software services. Now, it's not that these installers are insecure, but the way that they install WordPress is very predictable. And what happens is that hackers are aware of the way that they in fact install. So things like using a default username such as admin, using basic names for your WordPress database when you're using, for example, and this is a little technical, and don't worry about it if you don't quite understand. But WordPress uses databases, MySQL database to be exact, and usually these are created automatically in your cPanel. And the reality is that a lot of these auto installers just create something in the database name, such as database 01 or database 02, and so on in that order. And things like that, it's very easy to, once it's predictable, hackers basically have a head start in terms of doing abuse to your site. So even if you do use auto installers, because some of them, I know, for example, Softaculous does allow you to change the username, the default username, and some other fields. So the more unique you can make your installation, which is what a manual installation does, is the better off you will be. And the reality is that even if you do use an auto installer or have used an auto installer, there are still ways to keep your site secure. But it's just that my recommendation, and personally how I install WordPress, is to always start with a manual installation. Okay? So we'll just cover a couple of other things that you should be aware of in the next set of videos. The next thing that I want to look at when we look at securing your website is the use of your passwords. Of course, every time you log into the back end of your site, going through your admin area, you need to use a password. Now, you need to ensure that your passwords are unique. So, for example, I especially discourage you from using the same password that you use for your WordPress login to be the same password that you use for your hosting account, the same password that you use for email. Because let's face it, the reality is that we don't like to have to remember a million different passwords. It's very difficult. We choose passwords for things that are easy to remember. And so we tend to reuse these passwords. But the reality is that if someone finds out the password for your email and you use one password for all your logins, then what will happen is that now they have access to your email, they have access to your site, they have access to your hosting, and and that creates a lot of issues. So we really have to, of course, avoid using the same password for multiple logins, and also you have to ensure that you use unique and difficult passwords that are easy to guess. So you want to avoid using passwords like the name of your dog, or your middle name, or your street address, or your children's birth date, things like that. You really need to avoid, using passwords like that, because those are easy to guess, and hackers will. You have to understand that security does start with you, and you have to be responsible for your passwords, and you have to also be careful about who you share your passwords with. And another thing is that you should update your passwords, change them fairly regularly, every 3 months or something like that. And I know you must be saying to yourself, how can I possibly, remember all these passwords and create unique passwords, without writing them down, and now I have the issue where I've written down the passwords, and if somebody gets to that, bit of paper or spreadsheet, wherever you've gotten the passwords recorded, then now they have access to all your information. Well, one solution that I personally use is called LastPass, and you may have seen me using it throughout this video course, where it installs right inside your browser, and it's compatible with most of the major browsers. I'm using Google Chrome, and I have it installed now, and basically what it does is that once you have an account, and it's free to use, there is a premium version, but chances are you may not need to use it, but there are some great additional features, and I'm not making any money by recommending this. It's just something I use for myself, and what essentially happens is that each time you log in, and you may be familiar with this because most browsers will try to do this, where once you log in to your email or any other site that requires a username and a password, then your browser will ask you to save this information. I don't recommend at all that you use your browsers, because there are a lot of, apart from the individual conditionalities of using different browsers and their terms and all that stuff, the reality is that if you go to a computer that is not yours, then you don't have access to all these passwords. And the great thing about LastPass is that you can easily install it and uninstall it, to any browser, and you can set up security and fail-safe, so that once you log in, so for example, if you were to use a friend's computer and forget to log out, you can set it up that once you log in to your computer, then the previous access will be logged out. So things like that. So like I said, it is free. It's a wonderful tool, and as you can see here, if you look at this login screen, you see a number 2 here. So I have 2 logins for this particular for this particular site. So if I just click on the symbol there, then I can easily just select the user that I want to use, and it will enter the username and password, and I can just log in. So I never have to enter a password, and this is particularly useful if you're logging in outside of your home, which I really don't recommend. Let me just log back out. I really don't recommend that you use free Wi-Fi to log into important areas like your website. It is prone, you don't know who else is on the network, you're prone to being hijacked. Persons could be just looking over your shoulder, looking at your passwords. A great thing about this is that you don't have to type in the password. The only password you have to remember is the LastPass password. So you just have to remember one very secure password, and LastPass will do the rest. And it also has a lot of other great features, such as it can store other information that you may need to fill out forms. So if you sign up for a lot of stuff online, you know, it's great for that. So I do recommend it. And like I said, it's free. And there's a premium version, and one of the features of the premium version is that if you have outsourcers and you need them to work on your site, then you don't have to give them the password to your site. You can set them up as a user, share the password, they'll be able to log in using the LastPass, but not actually have to get the password. And then of course it's very easy to just change your passwords afterwards anyway. And another great thing that LastPass does is it generates secure passwords. So you never need to use a password like your dog's name or your children's birth dates. You know, it's just really secure passwords. So I really recommend that you check that tool out. The next thing that you always want to do, and I've mentioned this before, you know, in previous videos, you know, is to always update. Pay attention to your updates, whether it be, of course, unfortunately I don't have any updates here to show you, but whenever you see this area update pops up, you know, whether it be to update WordPress itself, plugins, themes, you should always try and do it as quickly as possible. The great thing about WordPress is that it has a wonderful community of users and developers who create fantastic plugins and themes and are continually testing the WordPress software itself. So any vulnerabilities or you know, breaches are usually picked up pretty quickly, and the fixes are normally presented in updates, whether it be for WordPress itself or for a particular plugin or for a particular theme. And the great thing is that you know, most of these updates are one click in. You just need to click the update button and you're safe, because what happens is that if you don't update your plugins, your themes or WordPress, then what happens is that these vulnerabilities are known to hackers, and once they determine that you have an old version of a theme or a plugin, then they know exactly how to get into your site. So just pay attention to updates. And another thing for you to always, you know, do is whenever you are not using a particular plugin or a theme, make sure you deactivate it, and not only just deactivate it, but delete it. If you're not using it, then remove it from your site, because there's still the possibility of there being vulnerabilities even if you're not using it. So just try and always keep your site up to date and only use what you need to use, because the reality is we are talking about software, and you know, software will have bugs from time to time. It's just a part of how software is, and particularly with WordPress and all the different plugins and theme developers, a lot of these people are independent of the core persons who create WordPress itself, so you can have clashes. And like I said, this isn't unique to WordPress, but you know, the great thing about it's actually a plus, is that usually vulnerabilities are identified pretty quickly and can be fixed with an update. So always try and keep your site up to date.